Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla is up 1.3%. It was up about 2-3% earlier today, and it's kind of slid down a little bit. Over the last 5 days, Tesla is up 4%. In the last month, up 14%. Overall markets are flat. All indices are pretty much flat. Nvidia is down 2.5%. GameStop down 24%. I believe they announced a secondary offering, so they're trying to cash in on the recent surge in the stock price. Reddit up 9% after announcing a deal with OpenAI. Let's see if Robert has anything to say on that front. Any questions, comments, please request to speak. One of my goals is with this space is to build a kind of comprehensive overall understanding of the big tech companies, because I think they kind of fit in together. They compete for employees, they compete for GPUs, they compete for investor money. So I think it's important to kind of understand. That's like one of my goals, just kind of set the tone in this space a little bit too. Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing great.
What do you make of this OpenAI deal with Reddit?
Yeah, it's a significant deal. You really are seeing these LLMs, especially on the frontier, they're running out of data essentially, right? As vast as the internet is, once you've already trained on the entire internet, I mean, you're sort of running out of new stuff to train on. So a lot of deals OpenAI has been doing has been focused on getting new data sources. They've done deals with, for example, scientific organizations, and now they're doing this deal with Reddit. So gaining access to more training data and better quality training data is really essential. And, of course, X doesn't have to do a deal with like this because they already own a huge source of data. But for OpenAI, which can't train on X data, for example, having the Reddit data set, which is very much comments, question and answers, essentially dialogue between the users, that's a very important data set for telling this type of LLM how to behave. And the subjects discussed on Reddit are comprehensive, pretty much everything. So it's a very useful data source. It's real time to some extent. OpenAI recently has been facing copyright issues with a number of different companies, the New York Times most notably, but other publishers as well. And they've essentially asserted that, look, you train this thing on copyrighted data, and it's then giving answers that are taken from the New York Times and other sources, but we're not being compensated for it. So we're going to sue you. And they've had to make some changes to their products as a result of these copyright issues. So essentially, what you're seeing is the creators of the training data are more and more asking for compensation for the training data they're providing. You've also seen a similar deal with Stack Overflow, which is a site for programming questions and answers. And OpenAI signed a deal with them as well. So, we've been saying for a long time that data is the new gold, but you're really seeing it now more than ever, where the creators of these LLMs are increasingly having to pay, huge licensing fees to get access to this training data.
And of course, X doesn't have to do that because X has all this conversation data as well, available original content. So I think that's going to be a huge advantage going forward for X and Grok. Robert, what do you think?
Totally agree. Omar laid it out properly. This is going to give OpenAI access to a huge data set that about news, right? About real-time events and a lot of other things that go on Reddit.
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us early today, Robert. How was your AI space earlier?
It was awesome. Last night we were on, Dylan and I were up until like 2:30 in the morning again, having fun.
Yeah. I really love this proliferation of Tesla AI related spaces on X. I mean, there's a new one popping out almost weekly now, which is great.
There's a lot of AI news shows. Thursday AIs for the nerds. There's other news shows that cover the AI space. That's really interesting. And then you and Omar are always covering Tesla, and it's really appreciated.
Good, thank you. Michael, how are you?
Doing well. A little bit under the weather, but otherwise fine. Lots of
What?
interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, I hope you feel better soon. What's on your radar these days?
I didn't actually hear about the Reddit and OpenAI thing, so that was interesting. I'll have to look at it afterwards. But my focus is mostly on Tesla, and I my, on my mind was the rumors. There was a rumor that the UPIT data was updated after it was embarrassed by Elon's post. I also heard a rumor that there was an internal Robotaxi specific neural net, and I
Wait,
wanted to
tell us
discuss that.
more about the EPID data rumor.
Yeah, it was just a rumor someone posted. It's not very credible, in my opinion. But
Wait, say it again. There's some background noise coming. Are you in like a party? There's
no.
there's some ladies in the background. They can come into the space if you want.
Nope, not in a party. Sorry about that. Anyway,
Yeah, so what happened with EPID data?
I don't think there's anything concrete. Maybe someone here knows, but there was a few posts from some accounts. One of them got deleted later. That the Yipit data was updated, and that was around the time that Tesla spiked at 10:30. So I thought maybe there was some credibility, and someone had shared that there was a lot of buyers at that time.
That sounds like BS to me. But if anybody has any concrete information, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of pose it as a question if anybody has anything on the Yipit data.
Was there anything specific about the post that got deleted later?
Nothing specific.
Yeah. And was the source of the post anyone you know, or was it like anonymous account?
Anonymous account. It was the only reason I was kind of caught my eye was because it was the timing.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Well, anyway, we can move on from that. You were saying one more thing after that?
There's a couple other things. One other thing was the rumor that Tesla has internal Robotaxi specific neural nets. I wanted to hear from people what that, especially Omar. I think Omar, you had posted about that before. So I'm curious what that looks like and what that is.
Yeah, if I kind of just to set the stage, I think Omar posted a few days ago, that FSD is sold internally, if I remember the wording correctly. And then yesterday, Fred was, adamant. I mean, maybe adamant is not the word, but he said a couple of times that Tesla is very close to robotaxis. I'm not sure what it means, and I'm not sure obviously very close is a relative term, but that was interesting for Fred to be so bullish on robotaxis, honestly. Omar, what do you know about it?
Well, we are seeing a number of moves which are happening publicly. I believe Tesla may have confirmed publicly that they are training an unsupervised version of FSD. It's a lot like FSD supervised, but it's just designed to have no human in the driver's seat, perform ride sharing workflows. So some of the fallback strategies are a little bit different. It's never going to, for example, ask you to take over. It would, like for example, whereas unsupervised FSD, if it's driving in the fog, might ask you to take over if it's too foggy and it can't see. Unsupervised FSD would have to slow down and maybe pull over or maybe drive slowly. There are different strategies to deal with the same thing. Then we've also seen a very curious Model 3 driving around with no side mirrors and some very strange cameras attached to it. I believe that this is testing out the hardware for the Tesla Cybercab and trying to get a sense of what the data is going to look like with that camera placement and make sure that the supervised and unsupervised models are working for that. So essentially, I think what they're going to unveil on 8.8 is, okay, here's a vehicle without a steering wheel and pedals. And of course, we've got a new version of FSD, similar to the models we use on our car in supervised mode, except they're trained to be used unsupervised.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of that Model 3 with interesting camera locations. What did you make of it? These are cameras that kind of got pasted on inside the back window and one in the back. Is there any credibility to it, you think?
Well, it's certainly odd. It's an eyebrow-raising picture for sure when you see it. You do wonder what exactly they're doing here. Why are the pillar cameras on the car covered up? And why have the side mirrors have, been removed? Like, what is this exactly? So there's a little bit of speculation saying it's the cyber cab, or maybe they're just testing a version of the Model 3 without side mirrors or something. I'm not sure, but they're definitely testing something. My guess would be they need to find a way to essentially test out the camera placement of the cyber cab, collect some more training data so that they can give a demo on 8.8 and show the cyber cab, driving around with just computer vision. And they probably want to do that without obviously revealing what the cyber cab is going to look like. Hence why they would try and get a Model 3 with a similar camera position and try and use that to refine the unsupervised model they're training.
Interesting. Well, I guess we'll keep our eye on that. So Spring Update is rolling out, as I understand it, from About Tesla, and we're supposed to be getting 12.4 to the internal testing team. I was thinking about Omar, and with Elon's tweet, 12.4 potentially having 5x to 10x improvements in miles per this intervention. What are the ways Tesla and Elon can know about, kind of estimate that without even having it rolled out to an internal team yet? Is it kind of like simulation data kind of thing? Omar? Robert, what do you think?
I missed the question. Sorry, you were talking about simulation.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of Elon's tweet about 12.4 potentially having a 5x to 10x improvement in miles per intervention. But 12.4 is supposed to be rolling out to the internal team this weekend. So how
Yeah,
would he know that ahead of time, even before it starts rolling out?
because they run it in the simulator. They also know that they've fixed many problems, right? On my drive, let's say you just take my drive, picking up the kids. It used to make a lot of mistakes on turns. Those mistakes don't happen anymore, mostly. There's still a couple of places where it makes mistakes. They know that they're working through the mistakes and moving us down the march of nines. And so they can predict pretty well um, what's getting fixed and how much better it is. But yeah, I would assume they're running a lot of miles in the simulator.
Michael?
I don't think it's just the simulation. I think, based on Ashok's comments from the last quarterly call, he specifically said that they will take the latest software neural nets, and they will play them through quote the all of their kind of critical events database, to see how they would behave. So I'm assuming that's how Elon is able to say that he thinks there will be a 5 to 10x improvement. Obviously, there might be differences geographically, based on its existing performance, and also there might be a difference between what is in their database versus what we actually experience in the real world.
Okay, good. Luca in YouTube live chat says the audio is better than usual. How is that possible? And it's possible because I have great Wi-Fi connection right now and no noise around. And I'm speaking directly into the iPhone. And if you'd like this to be the new norm, please go up to the top of your screens and sign up for my Patreon so I can ensure this is the case every time. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you. I would like to comment on that point. Your microphone is much better today. If you want to help keep Yaman's microphone better, please make sure that you help Yaman in his journey to show the world how important Elon Musk and Tesla is. No, you laugh. I'm actually quite serious. You know, with something like Neuralink, you know people who are paraplegic could one day drive cars, right?
Absolutely. I'm so excited for that future. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
Omar
people
applied for the
miss
second.
a lot of important stuff here.
Omar applied for the position for the second test case. So
I don't think it's funny.
it's not funny. He said he applied. I'm not making a joke. I mean, didn't you apply, Jimmy?
What?
What did you have to say?
Anyway, I wanted to talk about um, that part too. I did want to mention, I do volunteer at hospices, and I think a lot of the work that's going into these different projects of Elon is going to pay dividends. May not now today or next year, but maybe in 10 years. And that is where innovation counts. And when it comes to self-driving right now for Tesla, there are so many applications which will help so many people. And it's just hard to imagine. I really don't like the naysayers say, oh, FSD isn't going fast enough. Just think of the applications of using Neuralink, connecting it to FSD. There are millions of people, not only in the world, but even in the United States, who find it difficult to drive a car. And this will give them the first opportunity for independence in their lives to move around, have mobility, and actually go visit their friends, go to work, and so on and so forth. This is an amazing opportunity. I think people shouldn't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you. Filmflexity, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing fine today. How are you?
I'm good. I can hear you better too.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a good
Anyways,
day.
yeah, it definitely is. It's night where I am, but it's a good day for you.
Yeah, it's beautiful outside today in Austin. Actually, that makes me wonder what the temperature is. It's actually really, really good today. It's 81 degrees, a little breezy. People are hanging out in Barton Springs pool. I don't know if you guys saw that post. Somebody from X said they quote tweeted a picture of Barton Springs pool in Austin with people laying out at like noon. And they said, I have a hedge. I mean, I guess he was joking, but I have a hedge fund and we send out analysts to ask them where they work and we short those companies and we're beating the index. Not a bad strategy, actually. But yeah, welcome to Austin. Things are really popping here still. Restaurants are full, bars are full, but the Austin real estate is getting crushed. And the Fed isn't likely to cut rates anytime soon. So these mortgage rates are probably going to stay at about 6-7% for a while for the foreseeable future. And even if Austin real estate, let's say the rental prices turn down, home prices turn down, if the nationwide economy is doing okay and nationwide home prices are doing okay, kind of like in 2005, then I think Austin could become the Las Vegas of this cycle. So that's something to keep in mind.
Didn't Austin pass a law yesterday saying that you can make townhouses on single family lots now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll ask. We actually have a real estate expert that I asked him to come in here once every other week or so. So that's something to ask him when he just. But I see him almost every morning, and so we kind of do a 5-minute kind of catch up between real estate, Tesla, Austin, stocks, and he was telling me yesterday that Austin demand for real estate is kind of is pretty low, and the supply is also coming out. I also watch Altos Research weekly podcasts, and Austin inventory is rising very rapidly. It's now above pre-COVID levels. So it's very unusual in the sense that no other market really across the country is facing that at this time. But Austin is also important for our purposes in this space because it's home to Tesla. So, something to keep in mind. Bull 2035. Sorry, Flex, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, so this morning there was a market chatter report from MT Newswire. I couldn't get access to it, but it was about how Shanghai might be easing cross-border data transfer for three sectors, and apparently, it was related to Tesla in some way. If anyone has access to the report, share it.
Okay, thank you. Bull 2035, welcome.
Hey, I just wanted to double down on what was said before regarding
Your audio quality is low.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, better.
I just wanted to double down.
Worse.
All right. I'm going to listener.
Okay. Gianni.
Yeah, I just wanted to add an anecdotal comment about the enhancement of quality of life for people who want to drive. We were talking about Neuralink and getting quadriplegics to drive. In real life right now, I know several early 80-year-olds who have compromised vision and they're tentative with driving. And the enhancement of FSD has made their lives great. And one guy in particular, he's a relative of mine, he's been pitching the Tesla to all the people in his retirement community, and they're super gung-ho about this. So there's all these little cool ecosystems, things that are going on right now that are exciting. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Gianni. And thank you for your kind words yesterday on X. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, you're really providing a great service. I love these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Pennington, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. I just had a burger. Weather is nice. It's Friday. Pretty happy. How are
That's
you?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing over here. It's finally nice shorts weather in Colorado. So after this long winter, it is really nice to go outside and just be comfortable.
Yeah. Tesla stock up 1.3%. GameStop down 23%. Omar, how are your GameStop shares doing?
I sold out of them one day later. Made about
Nice.
$100 profit on 5 shares, so managed to time that one well.
That's perfect. What's the secret?
Just push buttons and hope it works.
Yeah. That works.
I think it was up like 70% already when I bought in. But, so I thought, okay, let me just throw in 5 shares for fun. This thing obviously has a tendency to do crazy runs, so let me just join the fun a little bit. It had a crazy run. Then I think it was a, overnight market or after hours or something I sold. It was up nicely. I said, okay, this obviously isn't going to last. The fundamentals are detached from reality. We've seen this story before. And yeah, got an extra half a Tesla share out of it.
Nice. Lincoln, this is not a chill space. What you're doing up on the speaker board.
I sometimes get lost.
Anything interesting and material to add to the conversation?
Tesla related.
Mhm.
I don't have anything right this second.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
maybe tonight we can do a chill space if people are
Yeah,
around.
I'm down.
All right.
Down.
Machine, how are you?
I don't know why you let this charlatan up to speak, talking about his GameStop gambling addiction. It's reprehensible. And I, for one, helping the common man, shorted GameStop and made money. And I feel good about making that money. I'm not trying to wreck the stock market. I'm trying to control the stock market. So pat me on the back, not Omar. And speaking of Omar, there was a car alarm that woke me up at like 4 a.m. outside. So I actually woke up and remembered my dream. And in my dream, somehow Omar's involved, He invited me to a
Again.
party in San Francisco, and I'm walking to the party, and I find it, and he's not there, and there's just a bunch of people in the house on ecstasy, and they're all sweating profusely, and they all keep trying to wipe their head sweat on me, my clothes, and I was just horrified, and that's when I woke up. So that was my dream.
Well, that sounds like something that could potentially happen, although I don't think people on ecstasy are that sweaty.
Yes, they are.
How do you know,
How'd
Machine?
you?
It's a known side effect from ecstasy. One time I did try it, didn't do anything. That was a long time ago. But my dad's an expert in ecstasy, so I could ask him.
Hmm. Hey, I have a question for you. Did you see my reply that you ignored?
No, I don't know. You're asking me what you're obsessed with our bet that you're going to lose now. What is the question?
I'm definitely not going to lose it. What do you think exactly will 5x to 10x with 12.4? Let's speculate a little bit.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, that a lot of it could be comfort disengagements, not necessarily critical. Because again, we're interpreting what Musk's thinking about. We don't know exactly. I would bet that it's more comfort disengagements versus critical will improve 5 to 10x. But I still believe critical disengagements will go down at least 50%, if not like 75%. So less than the 5 to 10x, but
Yeah.
still a 2 to 4x.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be more like that. And since FSD 12 is extending into highway with 12.5, the improvement we're looking for is going to be on city streets primarily, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the
Robert.
highway stack is
Omar.
improving as well. We're just not allowed to try it yet.
Right. So, but the highway stack is still V11, right?
In the version we use, it's still the old stack, correct?
Right. Okay, Robert.
If you look at what causes me to disengage, a lot of times it's in the wrong lane. So I would assume the path planner is going to get a lot more accurate about putting you in the proper lane. Another one is potholes. If it's heading toward a pothole, I'll always disengage because I have rims that get broken if I go over potholes. So will it avoid potholes better? We could go down the list. Everybody has a different list, right, of things that it doesn't do right.
Lincoln.
Material coming up. Today I was just on my way to get pho, which is a kind of Vietnamese soup, and there was a jacket in the road, and it swerved around the jacket. So I've never had to do that before.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we have a number of people who have reported that the car has avoided potholes. I don't think it's a widespread thing. I don't think Tesla talked about it as a feature just yet, but we may be seeing some maybe early signs of it.
Yeah, I think what confuses people is that things are never 100%. So oftentimes, let's say FSD handles 80% of speed bumps, but it doesn't handle any of the speed bumps in your area. People might say something like, it doesn't handle speed bumps, when in reality, it may handle most speed bumps, but just not the ones you're seeing.
We have a good question from YouTube live chat. I'll put it up on the screens as well. And when people ask a question on YouTube live chat, please tag my alias at Value Analyst 1 so that it highlights on my screen so I don't miss it. Jake McCombs asks, what percent of the 5x to 10x claim in 12.4 do you think will be in the form of better software versus removing the nag? I know lots of people who use FSD, but always disengage after 10-15 minutes because nag is too annoying. Omar, what do you think about that?
Well, so first of all, it's a lot of just talking out of our ass here. So I don't think it's going to be a 5 to 10x. I think it'll be a 2 to 4x. Well, based on what? I don't really treat all of these comments by Elon as like the Bible. I consider them to be sort of casual comments he makes, right? So, okay, directionally, he's saying that there's going to be a big improvement in interventions per mile. But of course, there's not one rate of interventions per mile. There's a lot of different ways to look at the problem. What's the rate of interventions per mile in the rain? What's the rate of interventions per mile in the snow? Day, night, Los Angeles versus Nebraska. There's a lot of different ways to slice it. So I don't, it's what he's saying is hard to believe. It's such a big improvement that it's just hard to believe. So I'm not sure what to really believe until I see it. I'm just going to wait until we can try the update, maybe collect some data about it, maybe just get a sort of subjective experience. But, what he's talking about is really a pretty profound improvement in the foundation model. So that's certainly exciting, but I don't know if it'll actually be 5 to 10x. In some cases, it may be, more than 10x. In some cases, it may be less than 10x, depending on what type of situations you're presenting to it. I don't think, the rate of interventions has anything to do with the NAG. I think when they're talking about interventions, they're really looking at a filtered data source, which is interventions that are going to cause a crash, right? I mean, people intervene for all kinds of reasons. Someone may intervene because they thought the car was going to crash, when in reality, it wasn't going to crash at all. They may intervene just because they got scared. They may intervene because the road was rough and that made them feel uncomfortable. They may intervene because they got impatient. I had a situation yesterday where I was at a four-way stop in downtown Los Angeles where the traffic light had broken and it was flashing red. And the car was extremely hesitant. It probably let 5 to 10 cars go that were in the lane to my left before it finally made it across the intersection. It let pedestrians cross. Everybody was trying to assert themselves and go, and it was just way too deferential. So it probably took, maybe at least 20 seconds to do something that would have taken a human driver 2 seconds. Any sane person would have intervened in a scenario like that. But what we're really talking about for Robotaxi is safety critical interventions, things where it would have crashed the car. Just being slow is maybe going to annoy your users a little bit, but it's not necessarily a showstopper as far as actually getting a driverless service out there. So, I mean, the experiences I'm having are pretty profound. I tried Waymo for the first time yesterday in downtown LA. So FSD drove me from the parking lot of Best Buy in Torrance to the Broad Museum in downtown LA. It was about an hour drive, and it did it without any interventions. So just right away, wow, this is incredibly useful. Forget Robotaxi, forget whatever in the future. The ability to not have to sit through an hour of LA traffic and just push one button and it can take me parking lot to parking lot is huge. No wonder there's Tesla's just all over the place in Southern California. It's become really essential. But then, if Elon's saying, okay, it's going to be 5x to 10x more miles per intervention on top of that, I'm really expecting a much stronger base model that not only includes less safety critical interventions, less comfort related interventions, but has a number of really sophisticated improvements, including improvements on hand signal detection, hesitancy in changing lanes, and all kinds of other issues. So frankly, it's a little bit difficult for me to imagine a model that could be better than this because this one is already performing so well. And yes, I know it's not perfect, but an hour long drive it can do for you, that's a huge benefit. So, yeah, it's hard to really know for sure, but 12.4 should be rolling out to employees this weekend. Employees have been trying actually Smart Summon for some time. We've seen a leak from a decompiled Tesla app build today that shows that there's a new reference to Summon Screen V2. So I believe they're gearing up to launch this. It's going to have the ability to reverse. It's going to have a much better model. It's going to have actually Smart Summon and Banish. Essentially, we are looking at them, becoming feature complete after all these years, meaning the car can do all of the main tasks it needs to do. And after that, it's just grinding down on reliability. And they're doing this all on hardware 3, which people like Machine said was impossible. There's no way you can get the car to drive on hardware 3. And they haven't even touched hardware 4 yet. And, hardware 3 is, like a 10x improvement. Are you kidding me? Like even a 2x improvement from here would be insane. A 5x to 10x just doesn't sound believable. So I'm holding off judgment until I try the version myself. Elon will say a lot of things, but I'm not sure how precisely he's really speaking, or, like we've said, there's a lot of vagueness there. But pretty soon, within a week, we should start to get the software ourselves and be able to see what he's talking about on our own cars.
Very good. Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for it too. I have access to a Model 3 I can borrow from my friend, and he kindly allows me to test each version that comes out on his car. He added me to his, um, you know, account. So I have the phone app. I just walk up to the car, and it's like my car. I go in, the seats are adjusted, the steering wheel adjusted, the settings are adjusted. It's kind of like my car. I mean, if I didn't tell somebody, I could literally pass like this is my car, which is amazing. And it kind of goes to show the extent that Tesla has gone over the years to set up this robotaxiable, shareable vehicle network. Although Machine is adamant that the existing fleet will not be added to the robotaxi network. What do you think, Omar? Do you think the Model 3s, Model Ys produced today at some point in the future will be added, or do you think it's just going to be the purpose-built robotaxi on the network?
I think it actually doesn't matter. I believe that it will. They will actually be able to make the existing cars autonomous. They are designed to be upgraded. They're already showcasing incredible capability. But it's also a little bit of an overly debated point because they have all these manufacturing facilities. If there's a change they need to make, let's say they need more computer, a better camera, or whatever, let's say they need to add LiDAR, they can just do that and start making these cars. They've got production of around 2 million units a year. Waymo's got like 1,000 cars in a week, with some minor production changes, they could have many times over the fleet of Waymo if they required a hardware change. But it's not really about can it be autonomous or can it not be autonomous. The philosophy is let's make every car as good as it can possibly be. So whatever the physical limit of hardware 3 is, we're going to discover that. And if hardware 4 or hardware 5 or hardware 6 can drive a little better, that's great. Maybe, it is possible what the line is, I don't know, that, okay, this has the level of performance needed and hardware 3 doesn't, because maybe it needs to run a bigger model or something. But so far, they haven't even touched hardware 4. It's running in hardware 3 emulation mode. And hardware 3, for example, you just check out the video I posted. It drove an hour through LA traffic without any intervention on, hardware 3, which came out in 2019. There's cars from October 2016, Model S and X, that are running this latest software and able to do that, which is just an insane level of backwards compatibility. So the question isn't really will it or won't it be autonomous? It's really just, can we drive down the number of crashes as much as possible by making, every car as good as possible? And obviously we'll continue to improve the hardware as well. So you just look at the track record of these hardware guys who said this is impossible, this is impossible. They've been proven wrong every step along the way. They said, well, you can't drive a car with computer vision. Oh, removing radar is a mistake. Removing ultrasonics a mistake. They've now shipped features that are better than ever without using those sensors. They said, oh, the camera placement's wrong. It can't make unprotected lefts. That's why Chuck Cook can't make an unprotected left. The camera placement's wrong. And you look at it, it's nailing unprotected lefts every time now, doing it better than a human in some cases. So every argument we've heard about why this won't work has turned out to be wrong. They're still only trading a hardware 3 specific model.
Yeah.
And they're saying they're going to do a 5 to 10x improvement without even tapping into the power of hardware 4.
Yeah, it's amazing what they've been able to do with, um, cars that are. I mean, the Model 3 I'm testing is from 2020, early 2020 model, and it drives just as well as a new Tesla today on FSD, which is incredible. What they've been able to accomplish despite
Yeah.
all the skeptics like Machine saying here every single day. But before I go to Michael, just as a reminder, I just started doing kind of a quote unquote after party sessions on Patreon only. This is my way of kind of giving back to patrons. I find that it's more useful to do it this way, more interactive with live chat, instead of doing like a summary bullet points may not be representative of what people's views they change. So I like the interactive feature of it. So after we keep these X spaces to 2 hours max from now on, 2 hours on the dot. And then following that, I immediately go to Patreon and start about a half hour after party where I make sure patrons' questions are heard and answered as to the best of my ability. I'm the only person speaking on there. Um, so, I mean, others are welcome to come up and speak. Like Omar, if you're more than welcome to come up and speak if you want to. But it's going to be patrons only, and I think a lot of people just want to. But patrons allow this space to be free and open for everyone. So I want to make sure they at least get something in return in that way. Okay. The link to that is at the top of your screens. Michael, go ahead.
So if I understand Machine's argument correctly, it's basically that it could be inference compute limited, the current hardware cars. Um, and as they scale the model size, that the current cars might not be able to handle on their inference computers, that larger model. And I've seen some rumors around, that they have Robotaxi specific neural nets that look very promising internally. And I think Omar, you posted something similar. Um, so I'm wondering, um, could those be just neural nets with much larger models that cannot fit on the current hardware inference computers? And that's why 12.4, 12.5, 12.6 is separate from those Robotaxi specific. I mean, I'm just getting hung up on this Robotaxi specific language that I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they can do a lot without making the model bigger. You look at, the chinchilla paper, for example. If you just add a ton of data and train longer, the effect is essentially the same as if you make the model bigger. So you don't always just want to make the model bigger. There's trade-offs to that as well, such as the amount of compute you need, the latency, things like that. So, usually for LLMs, if you're trying to run a model, you'll run a smaller model, like maybe a quantized, 7 billion parameter version. And that's definitely the case here too. I mean, the hardware 3, I don't think people realize what an insane amount of compute it has. The thing has about 144 tops. That's 72 tops on the A and B computer. So each computer can do 72 tops. It's 144 tops together. I think the new iPad M4 chip can do uh, 32 tops, 32 trillion operations per second. So this chip Tesla did in 2019 is like more than four times the processing power of the latest state of the art Apple M4. Okay. It has an insane amount of inference capability. And you would think, oh, are they running out of inference capability? No, they actually have more inference capability now than they did before because all of these separate tasks that they had to run before for the legacy models are being turned off. And as they're being turned off, they actually have, more capacity than before. And you can continue to make a smaller model better. Like even in LLMs, you look at some of these smaller models and some of them are performing, better and better. And people are actually choosing the smaller models because they're cheaper and faster to run. And they can, especially when you fine tune them on a specific task, they can actually give you the same performance as the bigger model. So you saw like someone from the autopilot team today tweet and say, look, we have, other companies are seeing the same sort of scaling laws play out where you can actually predict the performance of the model as you add more data and compute, even without making the model bigger. And you can get a sense of what the progress is going to look like, what the performance is going to look like with a certain amount more data and compute.
Yoda.
Yeah, another way to look at the competitive landscape is that if you don't have a fleet, you will require a lot more compute and much bigger and or powerful models. But Tesla, because it has the fleet, it has this extra toggle to play with, benefiting from the data that it collects. So it's going to be much more cost effective per inference workload.
Michael.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with everything that was said. I'm just curious what you guys make of the robotaxi specific quote unquote neural nets that are being developed internally that are separate from the 12.3, 12.4,
These
5,
will run on
6.
hardware 3 as well. It's not necessarily, so they do have bigger versions of the model, bigger than what can run on the current car. So they've trained those models as well. And they're saying, well, let's see what a bigger model could do, right? If the only thing we needed to do was put more compute in the car and put a bigger model and we could do self-driving, then of course, let's do that. But they've taken the bigger model, they've taken the smaller model, they've looked at how much more data do we need to actually get the smaller model to perform as good as the big model? And can we actually use the bigger model to train the smaller model and things like that? So, they've fully looked at, the trade-offs of everything. And I think they feel pretty confident that we're nowhere near hitting the limits of what these hardware 3 models can do. When you're talking about a 5 to 10x improvement in miles per intervention, you're not seeing them come close to what a model that fits within hardware 3 can do. Eventually, yes, you would see theoretically performance taper off, but it doesn't seem like we've hit that point yet.
Right, but we need a lot more than 5 to 10x for robotaxi capability. It's a several 10x's. You have to do a march of nines, 5 or 6 nines, right? So
By my
and
calculation, we only need one more 5 to 10x to surpass Waymo's test fleet. So, and I tried Waymo yesterday and it was jerkier and worse than FSD in the same downtown LA environment.
Can
And it
you
was
dig can you dig into your calculation why we need only one more 10x to get to Waymo level?
well, if safety critical interventions are around, 300 and we 5 to 10x to 1500 to 3000, if you could, 10x again to 15,000 to 30,000, Waymo's test fleet in California is only at 18,000.
So interesting.
So, like, you think about the average driver, they drive 12,000 miles a year. So, this thing could essentially drive 18 months before getting into a crash at 18,000 miles. And then it's also improving at the same time. So then that time is getting extended. Waymo's driverless fleet is at about 79,000 miles per intervention, right? So you get above that, and well, now you're just surpassing them and you're doing it worldwide without any pre mapping.
Do you think Tesla would start a robotaxi service, a driverless robotaxi service, if safety critical disengagements were down to about 1 in 100,000 miles?
Yeah, sounds appropriate. Again, 12,000 miles a year, we're talking about, 10 years before there was an accident, and that would continue to go down. So I would say it would absolutely be appropriate at that level to launch.
Michael?
so in order for Tesla to launch the robotaxi service, once they are at parity with Waymo, they would also have to build out the infrastructure for remote controlling and also for what Waymo does, which is when a driver can come out actually to the car. That doesn't sound like what Tesla's trying to do. So to me, it seems like they would be working towards a couple 10x's. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think Tesla's AI is leapfrogging Waymo. Waymo is more ahead of Tesla in terms of actually operationalizing a robotaxi service and operating a driverless service at scale. They've given millions of rides. They've done it for years. They have a lot of experience on the regulatory side. But Tesla's AI is actually leapfrogging Waymo, and it's very apparent for me to see as someone who's used Waymo for many years. Waymo was always, smooth, zero intervention. But again, in this last drive I did yesterday, it was doing these kind of jerky moves. It was incredible the performance degradation in Los Angeles compared to San Francisco. So it really made it clear how challenging it is going to a new city for them. It was doing things like getting stuck in left turn lanes and getting stuck behind traffic downtown that it wouldn't necessarily do in San Francisco because everything is better mapped out and everything is better annotated. And it would make these jerky movements, pulling over, for example, and trying to get around cars that FSD, just the personality of it is just so much smoother. So you're seeing their approach with deep learning and all the data and compute they're putting into it. I think fundamentally just sort of leapfrogging Waymo, not obviously in the miles per intervention, but in the feel of the drive. And you can just kind of feel that, okay, this approach, if they can continue to train and get the miles per intervention down, is just going to knock Waymo out of the park, because not only is it actually providing a more human-like drive, it's doing it in a way that you can just drop it in China, drop it in Germany, drop it in the US, and the same model pretty much just works anywhere, which has prohibited Waymo and Cruise and others from scaling.
All right. I want to ask you about one more thing, but I forget now. How is the supercharger community going, Omar?
I don't know. It's mostly a lot of people just asking me to add them. I don't really know why. And just tons of messages all day. Hey, add me, add me. And sometimes I add them. It's just too many to do all of them. So that's pretty
Yeah.
much what the experience has been.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly, I still don't understand the point of communities, but the X team seems very adamant about communities. So maybe they're training some specific AI, but I have no idea. Anyway, I'm going through your tweets. Summon Screen V2, which we talked about. Tesla app update says still decompliant, but I like the Summon Screen V2. 11 other strings relating to Summon as well. This looks like they have built out a new UI page for it.
We're about to go driverless on the FSD stack. It's going to be amazing.
Nice.
Driverless in parking lots.
Nice.
But it's still going to be cool. You'll be able to sit in the back seat of your Tesla in a parking lot and give it a pin and watch it drive there without a driver.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Jeff Dean, one other thing in the updated Gemini 1.5 Pro report, we show how a research model that is mathematics specialized version of 1.5 Pro achieves a record score of 91.1% on the math benchmark. The SOTA just years ago in May was 6.9%. Okay. So Tesla is removing Steam Sport in the SNX. What do you make of that, Omar?
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. It was pretty cool to play the Grand Theft Auto in my Model S, but I almost never used it in practice because First of all, you had to like boot up a virtual machine, then run Steam, then you get Steam running, then you turn on Grand Theft Auto and it says, okay, we got to download the latest update. It's like 3 GB. And I'm on some cell connection in the airport. I've got like 10 minutes I'm waiting to pick someone up. So then I got to download this update. Then it's loading and it takes forever to boot up. By the time the game actually starts, it's time to leave. So it's a lot of expense to add the GPUs to the car, and I'm not sure it was that useful. So as they're trying to cut costs, make the cars more affordable, it kind of makes sense as something that is going to go. I would probably recommend them just accept HDMI input so people could connect their Xbox or their Switch or whatever that already has the games downloaded. You can download the games at home on your home Wi-Fi and then bring it in or something. So that might be a good substitute. But the Steam integration was cool, but it was ultimately kind of useless.
What do you think they're going to do with the compute that's freed up now?
I don't know. Maybe use it for something. I don't know. Probably nothing, if I had to guess. It's probably just going to go to waste. But I've got a rare Model S with Steam support if anyone wants to buy it.
Nice. So you're trying to get rid of your Model S, huh? You like the Cybertrucks that much?
I'm going to get a Model 3 Performance. It kind of makes sense, I think, to have one big car and one small car. And the Model 3 Performance just looks kind of amazing. It's got most of the stuff the Model S has. I think the sales on this thing are just going to be insane once they start going. I mean, people really want the new products, and Tesla's not able to supply them. And I think this is a big part of why we're seeing sales struggle to grow. So once they get this thing out, the new Model 3 registrations were just down massively year over year for Q1 for the new Model 3 in the United States, given the production challenges. And of course, they haven't been selling the performance model. So I think a lot of people are going to want this new Model 3 Performance. It looks pretty sweet.
Jesus.
Hey, hi, Yaman. Hi, Omar. Aloha, everybody. I'm kind of like totally amped. I downloaded FSD last night and I went driving around and wow, it's amazing. I'm just like, I got my free subscription finally. And there's only maybe 100 Teslas on Kauai. So I think it's a little rough. And I think it's because maybe it doesn't have enough mapping, you guys. That's my question.
Omar?
Yeah, it's probably just that the model still kind of sucks. So 12.4 is supposed to be a big improvement that's going to start rolling out in a week, hopefully. So let us know if you see any improvement in 12.4.
Okay, good. I see Elias in the crowd. I know he wanted to give us an update on the tracker. He made a few changes yesterday. We were only able to touch on it a few minutes, but I would love to hear a bit more about it today. When he's ready, I think he'll come up. All right, going through Omar's page again. Let's see if there's anything else we should be talking about.
There was some news out of China, but I got some conflicting takes on that.
What was the news?
Well, there was apparently some situation in Shanghai where they eased data export restrictions on certain things, including connected cars. So it was kind of unclear if this covered FSD data or not. Reuters wrote a story, they said it did. So one other Chinese account here on X, Chris Zhang or something like that, was saying that it didn't. But Reuters story pointed out that it mentioned connected cars, used car data, sales data, and R&D related purposes. So that's one category where potentially it could uh, work. My understanding is that Tesla has secured an agreement in principle to take some of this Chinese data and use it to train FSD. I think the Chinese officials understand that it is just very difficult to actually train the model without taking some of the data and using it for training. And they understand sort of the science behind that. So I think given it's anonymized, as long as they blur out the faces, the license plates, things like that that are personally identifying that could be used to track them, they've been, supposedly this is a pilot program for 1 year in Shanghai. And I mean, I'm kind of confused why Shanghai would even be responsible for this. This seems more like a national issue. But so this is for a year. They would conceivably be able to take their data and train on it, which would be a big step towards, getting FSD into China. Now, whether this story is true or not, I had heard that they were seeking and had obtained an approval to do something like this and use it to train a version of FSD for China. There was also a second Reuters story which claimed that Tesla's looking at building a training data center within China as well. So, you know, a little bit of potentially conflicting information. I mean, it's possible that they could take this data and train on the US for now and then build some type of training data center in China. Maybe they're doing both. Maybe it's just temporary and they eventually need to do it in China. Or, I'm not really sure. But this is very consequential for bringing FSD to China. What would be ideal for Tesla is if they had permission to take some data back to the United States and use it in their training data centers there. And if they built a training data center within China, that could be advantageous to the company too. They could hire a lot of AI engineers in China. China's got some really great AI talent, but there are export restrictions in, for example, exporting H100s to the country. NVIDIA has a more limited chip called the H800 that they sell there. So that might present a roadblock too, but two interesting stories out of Reuters. Reuters doesn't have the best track record lately, so take it with a grain of salt. But getting FSD into China is very significant. So I attributed some of the price action in Tesla today to this story.
Thank you. Finflexity.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the data is real. It was released on WeChat from the Shanghai authorities. So what it basically says is that you will have 64 categories of general data, which will be allowed to transfer worldwide internationally. But that data has to come from a certain area. So it is something called is a free trade zone, which is focused on data. So apparently Shanghai has a 3-tier structure about what companies can collect data and how they can transfer it worldwide. So they are trying to just protect their, so to gain more international business into the city, they are using it. Yeah. It was apparently led by Tesla and it also had 14 other car makers. So one was Porsche and they didn't release the other 12.
Yoda.
Yeah, I think in the long run, having a dojo training center that's physically located in China with the allowed type of chips is probably good because it paves the road for other Chinese EV makers to license FSD and to reside their training data sets there. So I think it's probably positive in the long run.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really an incredible turnaround. It feels like just yesterday, as a matter of fact, it was just last month that we were talking about how FSD was never going to be approved in Europe. Things look tough in China. Now a lot of roadblocks seem to be falling in China. And in the US, in the EU, we have a proposal for system initiated maneuvers and new regulations that would allow FSC to operate without a nag potentially. So I don't think anyone really saw this coming. It's really looking like they may be maybe finally able to actually roll this out worldwide.
Machine.
I'm sorry. I thought I had just seen from some Chinese insider that FSD raw data still cannot be transmitted out of the country because it's considered, quote, core data. And you guys are talking like it's coming out. So what's the deal?
Well, the Reuters story said it's being treated as ordinary data and that would be allowed to be exported out of the country. So it sounds like there's a little bit of a disagreement. You might be talking about Chris Zhang. I read his post too, and that's what I was saying. Some people were saying that, the Reuters was mistaken. So it could very well be that Reuters was mistaken. Reuters has been mistaken about other issues as well recently. But based on what the Reuters article said, connected car data, R&D specific data is being treated as ordinary data that can, with I think a specific license or something. Or actually no, maybe they said it doesn't require a license. Now you can just use it out of the country for things like training or something like that. But it really seemed to be more focused on like pretty mundane things like manufacturing data, used car sales data, and that type of stuff, which made me kind of, think that Chris might have had a point there. But I'm sure it'll kind of become clear in the coming days. The one thing that really kind of made me question it was, why would this be coming out of Shanghai? Right? Wouldn't this really be a national issue in terms of data security? Why would any sort of updates to that policy be coming out of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone?
Machine.
Yeah. I mean, if I took it all together, it sounds like it's more generic data. FSD raw data not being shared, which means they're going to have to train it there. I trust Chris Zhang. He sounds like he knows more about China than you do. Your last name sounds like you know more about other countries, which Tesla doesn't have any relationships with.
What I had heard before this Reuters story was that Tesla had secured some type of in principle approval to use some of the data for training and fine tuning in their US data centers, where they've obviously built out a massive amount of training compute. I think the Chinese government is very science oriented, and they understand that they would like everything to stay within China as much as possible. But there are practical limitations, especially given some of the export restrictions on GPUs. And that if they don't want China to fall behind, they need to be a little bit permissive. So maybe a deal was made that goes something to the effect of, okay, you can take the data outside the country to train for now, but we would like you to actually build a training facility within China and long term be doing more of it within the Chinese border and not having to remove data from the country. So details are a little bit vague, but I think that the Chinese government is on board in spirit with doing what they need to get FSD launched in the country. And being overly restrictive on requiring the model to be trained or fine tuned in China versus using the existing training compute would definitely slow the launch of FSD down.
Finflexity.
Yeah, no. So the approval for the data is only applicable to one particular district in Shanghai. So this is the district where they are going to make their new factory. The data list covers intelligent connected vehicles, publicly offered funds, and biopharmaceuticals. They didn't give much detail other than that, but it extends across 64 data points, and these are three main categories that they are regulating. So it is basically a free trade zone. They are called SEZs in most of the countries, but they are using it to gather more international investors. So you'll not have export restrictions. You will not have anything else there. But again, it's only applicable in Shanghai. The rest of China, you can't do the same thing right now.
Thank you. Yoda.
Yeah, it's potentially a smart move here. Now, I know that in China, while you can't have specific chips from NVIDIA, you have kind of a substitute from NVIDIA. But if you think about what China's doing, one thing that they could be saying is, if you're gonna ban the most advanced AI chips from entering our borders, then we're gonna require you to have your data centers for training within our borders. And so what are you left to do is that you have to still supply these data centers with somewhat advanced chips. And so in a way, I think it's a nice hedge for them to essentially mandate AI chips to still come within their borders.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that China hasn't taken even more action against the actions of U.S. machine.
Going from NVIDIA chips to Chinese compute chips is like Yaman's ex-wife going from me back to moving in with him.
Well, I think first of all, NVIDIA makes a chip for China, the H800. It's almost exactly like an H100, but I think it has like less memory bandwidth or something like that. Like it's just limited in some artificial way. So it's just like a slightly less good H100. And obviously there's Chinese chips as well. It's unclear whether Dojo would be subject to this export ban. I mean, you would imagine that it would be, but I'm not familiar with the minute details of the regulation and how it works. So, it's possible that China could be doing something like this to actually put pressure on the US government to allow them to bring these chips in. And I believe, when you have export bans and things like this, there are cases where exceptions can be granted by the federal government. So it is possible that Tesla could even be granted an exception to bring H100s into the country, but that would probably be a tall order.
Thank you, Kim, for becoming a member of the Spaces. If you'd like to be as cool as Kim, you may do so via the link at the top of your screens. Machine.
Chinese chips are smaller, less girth, and have less power than American chips.
Well, in China's opinion, they did make the chips because they believe Taiwan is part of China. So I wouldn't underestimate the Chinese chips. This export ban is going to blow up in the US's face big time. They think, haha, you don't get access to our chips. In 5 or 10 years, it would not surprise me one bit if the Chinese have chips that are way more advanced than ours and they refuse to sell them to us.
Ravi.
Yeah, I have guidance from NVIDIA. Only thing that we're allowed to ship to China is the A800 chip. A800 is the same silicon as A100 with a special firmware that clocks it down a little bit, their compute capability. And what could happen is we already have the models trained here in US. They can use the A800 cluster, which is less powerful than the H100, but fine-tune the models instead of training it from scratch. That's what I heard from NVIDIA sources. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if all we have is an A100 equivalent chip, or actually a limited A100, then that would basically kind of make it impossible to train a similar model in China. So, I would then think if I was Tesla, can I train a model without using data from China, right? Can I use synthetic data that's not actually really from China, but looks like China? Can I use data from Vietnam or, other Mongolia or other places that may have similar road environments and situations to China? And can I actually train a base model that's strong enough that it can work in China on its own? So there might be some workarounds there too. But yeah, I think probably how they solve this is going to be a pretty closely guarded secret. So I'm not sure if we'll ever really get the answers, but it is, very interesting given data security requirements. But I think China also recognizes that if they're overly restrictive here and they prohibit cutting edge AI from coming to the market, their economy is not going to have access to the same technology you can get in the US. and I don't think they want that.
Machine.
Just unbelievable amount of racism coming out here. Omar thinks that all Asians look alike. You can just transfer one Asian country for another and everything will work perfectly. What assumptions? This is unbelievable. I will not tolerate this.
Did you realize that everybody on the speaker board laughed except for Omar?
Omar often doesn't find my jokes funny, and that pleases me even more.
I think Omar has your picture in his bedroom on the wall. Throw some darts at it every night before he goes to bed.
Absolutely.
Did you notice that a lot of people are blocking you, Machine? What do you make of that?
I mean, I don't. I noticed. I've noticed two people block me, and both people were very, very wrong. And I think what happens is that people who try to keep some sort of persona, and then when I cut holes through their persona, not because I want to, just because I'm trying to correct them, they don't like it. They don't like being shown up. For instance, AJ seemed like a very smart guy. Wrong on his claim that NVIDIA's historically had 40% operating margins. And when I showed him he was wrong, block,
Yeah.
capoeira.
Yeah. Exactly.
Someone else, same thing.
Don't worry about it. You don't have to repeat these things. What I generally have noticed is that when people say, this person blocked me for that reason, it's never for that reason. Long story short.
He's probably just jealous of my blonde hair then.
For whatever it is anyway. I mean, I'm jealous of your blonde hair, but I don't block you. Ravi.
Not yet.
The other thing I wanted to share, I found out some South Korean chip manufacturers are getting a lot of requests from Chinese companies. The ban on China is number of tops, the number of trillions of operations per chip that it can perform on a single chip. So some of the Korean companies have been asked by Chinese customers to put many of these small chips on a single PCB, like a PCI card. So that way, on an aggregate, they can perform more on a single physical card, if not in a single chip. So that's how they are trying to circumvent the ban. And they're also using Qualcomm chips, as you know, to do this, like clustering in a single PCI card. But what they're not able to solve, that those chips are for inferencing only. For training, the biggest and the baddest chip they can use today, sadly, is A800. Thank you.
And they're also buying chips in the US and smuggling them illegally over there. But Tesla wouldn't be able to do that, obviously.
All right. Let's see if there's anything else we need to talk about. Happy Friday, everybody. This space has been going on for about an hour and 15 minutes. It's going to go on for another 45 minutes. And if somebody's talking on the 2-hour mark, it's going to get cut off in the mid-sentence. So hopefully that'll be machine. Sawyer says, Tesla chair Robin Delholm says reports in Wall Street Journal that Elon Musk had taken LSD, cocaine, ecstasy, psychedelic mushrooms at parties, and that Tesla board members were concerned were absolute BS. I have been around this company for 10 years and have never seen any evidence. Machine?
I think Elon Musk sounds like my father. It's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, I actually heard from like other people too that supposedly party with him and everything, but yeah, it's all rumors as far as I'm concerned. Tesla chair Robin Denholm on Elon Musk. Do we have tough conversations about tweets? Absolutely. He's a contrarian, and you can't be a contrarian part of the time, so you got to work with that as a board. I might wake up in the morning and read a tweet that I wasn't expecting. I don't wake up to a strategy shift that we haven't talked about. That's a good point. Finflexity.
Yeah, so I just got some more, background into the China situation. So It was this way that in August of last year, the State Council of China asked the governing agencies to establish green channels for foreign companies to export data. Then in March, the Cyberspace Administration of China, they implemented new rules to design easy regulation on cross-border data flows. So I think they included exemptions for free economic zones in there, and that allowed the Shanghai authorities to say that anyone operating in our free trade zone can export that data. So it's not just for the zone. You need to have an office in the area, and then you'll be allowed to export any data that they have classified as, you know, general.
Okay.
So it is, yeah.
Thank
And
you.
Tesla has the new factory in that zone, so it works out perfectly.
Good. Machine?
No, I was just gonna say, I think the board, just like investors, probably perceive Musk the way that Omar perceives me. On one hand, you maybe wake up and he's making good takes, he's doing things as you expect. But on the other hand, you always gotta keep your other eyes open because he might just say something or do something just totally out of the ordinary that you're not ready for. And that's what Omar, he comes into all the other spaces. He's probably nonchalant, relaxed. And he comes in this space and he's like, ah, man, Machine's on here. I don't know what he's going to say. And it stresses him out.
What is it with you dreaming about Omar every other day and trying to appease him? You're concerned about how he thinks about you. What's going on here?
I don't know, but let's be clear. I don't remember my dreams usually. So these are just the ones that I remember. We don't know about all the other dreams and what's happened in those.
We can only speculate. We're going to take 10 seconds for everyone to think about what that might mean. All right, let's see. Good Morning America reported on Neuralink. I think they had the first human to have Neuralink on an interview. That's great. Tesla Megapack, the 125 megawatt and 250 megawatt hour Megapack site at our Gigafactory in Austin, Texas, offers critical redundancy to the ERCOT grid and backup power to the factory. In case of a grid-wide outage, the site disconnects from the grid to provide temporary power, allowing for a controlled operational shutdown. That's really good. SpaceX's Starlink is increasing the price of its global roaming plan to $400 a month from $200, which allows users to access the satellite internet service worldwide. The rate hike goes into effect on August 16 for existing customers. Interesting. Tesla has released some new Cybertruck accessories: spare tire and toolkit, mud flaps, under-seat storage bin, D-rings. Texas residents can enjoy unlimited vehicle charging for $15 a month and $400 per Powerwall each year with Tesla Electric. Great. We talked about V12.4 supposedly rolling out to Tesla employees this weekend. Elias, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. I'm glad that you were able to join for a few minutes yesterday and talk about some of the changes that Tesla FSD tracker had with Fred on the board and a bunch of others, all the bears and everything. I think your tracker is very important, has a great future. I definitely look at it. I make coffee bets on it, which means I relied on a source. Would you like to explain to Machine why he's going to be wrong?
How is he going to be wrong? I don't know what the bet was or what the criteria is.
Yeah, I was just kidding. But what are the changes that you made to the tracker lately that you'd like to kind of explain to us?
The big thing is seeing the scorecard and being able to filter by different versions or aggregate across versions. And then I also added a data accuracy tab so people can see kind of what the data looks like, because I'm doing some trimming on the data in order to get more accurate data in the various visuals. So you can see kind of the confidence intervals, error bars, and different things in order to kind of visualize the data both before and after.
Machine, is this the the website that you frequent the most, except for Omar's Instagram page?
Frequent No, I mean there's many other websites. No offense, Elias, but there's GitHub, not the other one. The other one maybe second place. Reddit, Tesla Motors Club. FSD tracker doesn't update that frequently. I mean, you're gonna have to get a lot more people driving for me to need to check this every day. That's too much noise. I think you need to check it like once a week, maybe at most.
Well, actually, Elias talked recently about he DM'd me recently about how many people submitted data in the last week. Elias, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, he forgot one source was Pornhub, but the big one is we went from, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 people submitting data on a, we'll say, weekly basis, consistently, and over the last 2 weeks we're sitting at 47, I think.
That's a big jump, Machine. I would say that's a 5x to 10x jump.
I've never heard of that website. I don't know what you're talking about, weirdo. But yeah, that's still 47 incels. I'm not like paying attention to these people. Their little trips around the block once a week. That's not how signal to noise ratio works. We need to get a little more data for me to trust things happening in that amount of time. I don't need to respond to it.
I mean, look at this. Like the 12.3.6, I'm looking at the dashboard, right? Has more than 9,000 miles added already. This weekend is going to exceed 10,000 miles. City miles are almost 4,000. Highway miles, more than 5,000. 613 entries just on that dot update alone, 12.3.6. Okay. I've been looking at the percentage of drives with no critical disengagements has been pretty consistent around 96%. So I think that talks to, like, in the past, these numbers would change quite dramatically as more people added data, but the consistency is very good. I think it's notable. And, he's added a bunch of other data points as well on that dashboard. So I'm watching pretty closely. I recommend people do. And if you'd like to increase the reliability of this tracker, please reach out to Elias and volunteer to add your trips on there. I think Elias and a couple of the people who are working on the tracker have made the process pretty easy at this point. They'll continue to improve it. And if you join, Elias will send you a thank you card in the mail. Michael?
Yeah, I like to enter in my data to Elias's tracker. It's great. It's easy to use, and I kind of feel like I'm contributing to the community by doing it. So you guys should all do it. But what I wanted to ask Elias was, how many miles per week right now? You said 47 people entering. Approximately how many miles per week are we talking? A couple hundred?
We're getting a couple hundred per day. So last week, I posted a weekly update of how many miles driven for that week, and I posted an update on Tuesday, and I think we had 4,600 miles in 1 week for the previous week.
Yeah. And V12 overall, with all the dot updates and the minor updates, has more than 26,000 miles added to the tracker. That's amazing. Yoda?
Elias, love what you're doing. Just realized hearing you sound a little bit like Gordon Johnson when you speak with force. Can you just try that for us?
It could be because I'm on speakerphone on my Cybertruck.
Can you say respectfully?
Respectfully, I disagree.
That was very good. Wow. I mean, that was for me.
I think we have Adrian number 2, but on the other side,
Elias, what are some of the features that you're going to add to this tracker in the near future? What are you working on?
So right now I'm going to add the ability to filter by state and driving conditions. So one of the things that's been brought up a couple times is being able to, right now there's segregated data points, but being able to kind of connect them under in the data model is a little tricky. But essentially imagine being able to filter by 1236 California and perfect conditions, and between the hours of zero, I don't know, we'll just say midnight to 4 a.m. So you can see what the criteria is and also the results of the data points.
Very good. And can you give us an up since he's not here right now? Can you give us an update on what Kaz has been working on in the last few weeks and what the data is showing for him in his Robotaxi rides?
Yeah, so he has his own dashboard integrated, and every time he drives, he records like the region that he started in, the region that he ended in, and then also the data points associated with the drive, such as miles and disengagements. And then that stuff is getting added to his dashboard. There's a little map display. If you haven't seen, that's pretty cool because you can actually click on the map, drill down, hover. It's got a lot of functionality, cool stuff. But anyway, so he recently added a customer scoring system. Essentially, he asked the customer if they could rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, how the Robotaxi did, not how he drive or the services or the conversation he provided, but how the car did. And so he's been tracking that since I think April 8th, if I remember correctly. So it's a little over a month, but he's been collecting those data points to kind of get a scoring system.
Okay, great. And again, I recommend people to check it out and go through the pages. There are dozens of pages that Elias has created, not just the dashboard at the front, but there's troves of information on there. And keep in mind, this is not perfect, but it is improving very quickly. And thank you, Elias. All right. And welcome back anytime. Let's see what else. This space has been going on for an hour and a half. We have 30 minutes left. Please request to speak if you have any questions, comments. And then after that, I'm going to hop on Patreon for the after hour where I talk to patrons. And in these, half hour after hours, I also touch on macroeconomic data because I think, a lot of people in the Tesla space don't really care for the macro data. And so I don't really discuss it here anymore. I also hold macro related spaces on macro analyst page as well. So you can also just follow that. Omar, I heard there's on your page, there's a few tweets about head of macro. What is that about?
Well, there was this controversy related to David Einhorn, one of his employees, the head of macro, who left the company, has had some strong words from publicly, particularly about his short bets around Tesla and other missteps the firm has done. And they're currently involved in some litigation against each other. So it's a little bit of an interesting situation. The guy's actually one of my subscribers, so it's something that I'm, watching with interest.
All right. Finflexity.
Yeah, you were just talking about macro data, and apparently Jerome Powell has been quarantined because he got COVID right now.
Gotcha. I see on Omar's page, Ford Motor has issued a call to action to suppliers asking for help reducing costs on EV production, where the automaker is bleeding billions of dollars, according to Automotive News. Ford has the most EV sales after Tesla, but a far second. I'm also seeing tweets about Stellantis seeing years of RAM 1500 days of supply, which is kind of interesting. What's most surprising to me that the stock price of these companies aren't really reflecting that reality just yet. So I'm not sure what's going to change that. Stellantis today has 66 billion euro market cap, although the stock is down about 30% from the peak, 25, 30%. Interesting. Let's bring in Jimmy. Jimmy.
Hey, does anyone know any more information around GM moving a portion of their company to Silicon Valley to like pick up people for their crews?
Omar?
I haven't heard anything about that.
So I have a family member who works in GM, and he sent me over an article saying that GM has now purchased a small startup building in Silicon Valley, and they're basically headhunting for people to help them with their full self-driving program.
Well, they have a self-driving program. It's called Cruise. They're the 80% owner of that company. It's headquartered in San Francisco. So I'm not sure if this is for that or for a different effort, but I mean, an office space is the least of their problems.
Michael?
Did you see, Yaman, that there was a quote 0 yuan season offering in China where they offer zero down payment or zero interest option for Model Y and 3?
I did. Yeah. I mean, that's another, yet another kind of demand lever Tesla's pulling. I wonder if that's going to come to US. Obviously, these Model Y deals, 0.99% financing rate is a major step in Tesla. I mean, a step that Tesla hasn't had to take before. But you still have to pay, I think, what down? $5,000 down, maybe? So maybe that will come to US at some point too. Who knows? Who knows, right? But as it is right now, I mean, these Model 3, Model Y deals are just incredible. What I want to ask you is, you were ahead of Troy about Model 3 production ramping. How did you achieve that?
Like I mentioned previously, I know someone who tracks VINs in a different way than Troy does, and they send me updates.
Okay. And where do you see Model 3 production ramping throughout the rest of the year? To what level?
I mean, that would be very speculative, but I think it's pretty much pretty close already to where it was before the shutdown and the crossover to the uh, the newer version. So it should be probably like 90% of the run rate before. So there's probably still some outstanding issues, like the white seats were an issue recently, and performance obviously slows them down as they start producing the performance version. But I think, yeah, I think they probably already surpassed Troy's original estimate um, just in this quarter, so far this quarter.
Is this VIN tracking friend of yours in the room with us? Anyway.
No.
Okay. Cybertruck production is also ramping, but Troy, I think, still expects year-over-year decline in units delivered, right? What do you think about year-over-year units delivered?
Overall or Model 3?
Overall.
It's hard to say. I would be a lot of speculation. I mean, Elon thinks that the year-over-year units are going to increase. Um, Obviously, they are trying very hard to do that with the financing deals, but the macro environment seems very difficult. So I don't know how successful it will be. I do think I did see on Google Trends that after they offered the Model Y low APR rate, that the search interest went up 80 to 100%, depending how you measure it. From just before to right after they to the few days after that they offered the 0.99%. That's a significant huge bump. So hopefully they'll be able to clear out Model Y inventory and then return to cash flow positive in Q2 and fund their all important AI compute buildup.
Yeah. We saw a similar increase in search interest for Model Y after Tesla slashed prices in early 2023.
That was not sustained though.
Right. Right. Let me see if I can pull that up again. And then after that, we're going to go to Scott. Yeah, that went up. Search interest surged in January 2023. And then it came back, I would say maybe 80% of the way in March, and then surged again in April, and then declined throughout May and the rest of the year. Do you think this one will be sustained?
I mean, it's only been a couple days so far. It's kind of held, which is interesting. But again, they're only doing this promotion for May. So we'll see if they increase it back to the regular APR in June or not. But I have a feeling that they need to build some credibility, so they'll have to increase it.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a coffee bet with somebody, I forget who, that they will increase it 1%. I think it might be Bull 2035. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Scott, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Yaman?
Doing well.
So interesting experience today at the Tesla Service Center. First time I've been there. Minor issue. There was nobody in there, and so it was like I was the only person around the customers that even knew about Teslas. And I was wondering if anybody has had this experience related to FSD take rates. Everybody I asked in there had tried it. They used their 30-day free trial, and they all basically told me in no uncertain terms they don't like it more than autopilot because they can't use their phone. Um, they like autopilot. They can put it on. They can not pay attention and use their phone. Um, has anybody else like talked to a group of Tesla owners about their experience and heard anything similar?
Yeah, that's exactly what I hear too. I mean, people just want to be on their phone. They want to be texting, reading email, doing work. And but I have noticed a dramatic decrease in nags the last time I tested 12.3.6. And I think even the eye tracker is not nearly as sensitive anymore. So, which is an interesting development. So I'm going to be looking out for that with 12.4. Nick.
Thank you.
Scott, great point. Just wanted to add, I noticed during my trial at night, I could not get on the highway FSD to work. It kept saying like the cabin camera was covered. So I actually had to go in, disable it. I enabled autopilot and was able to drive at night on the highway perfectly fine. And Tesla's tried to replace my camera and I still can't, I couldn't get it to work. So I'm just trying to see if anybody else has had that issue or maybe it's just a software bug.
Omar?
I've heard of certain people having this issue for years, and it usually seems to relate to an issue with their cabin camera. So, are you driving in an area that's unusually dark, like no street lights at all?
So yeah, this was on the highway. They actually found that the IR sensors are not working. They've replaced the camera, and the IR sensors still aren't working. So I don't know if it's a software issue because we've replaced the parts. But sorry to get so too personal with my request. I'm just trying to see if anybody else has had this issue with the IR cameras not illuminating the cabin properly.
Yeah, that sounds like a hardware issue. I would talk to your service center. Another thing you could try is just turning on a light in the cabin and seeing if that helps.
That does help. That does fix it when I turn a light on.
Yeah,
O'Shea.
that sounds like a hardware issue.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to respond to the earlier comment, but also with the hardware issue on the camera, I don't have it on the cabin camera, but I do have issues on the driver side B pillar camera. They've come out and replaced it once as well, but it does say from time to time that it has been obfuscated and FSD might be degraded. So I don't know if others have heard it, but yeah, time to time the hardware does seem to have some
That's
little.
normal. That doesn't mean anything.
Oh, really?
That's just a disclaimer. It's not going to make your car start driving or anything like that.
Yeah, no. In the middle of in the middle of operation, it says that it's degraded, or whatever, for that because that camera got obscured, but really nothing really happened. Like there
Again,
wasn't.
I think sometimes people confuse like these sort of disclaimers for something they really need to worry about. So when it sees that something's wrong, it'll inform you. So if it looks like the side camera can't see anything, it's looking at it and it's just pure black, right? Then it's going to display that message. Now, there are a few reasons why the camera might be pure black. It could be a sunny day and the camera is broken and the data coming in is pure black. But if you're actually just driving on a highway and there's no lights and it's just black because that's what's actually there is blackness, then it'll also show that warning. But you don't need to respond to it. It doesn't mean anything's actually wrong. It'll still drive, but it's just telling you that I'm seeing black out of the camera. Eventually, I think they'll just remove that message.
Thank you,
Yes.
Omar. 15-minute warning. 15-minute warning, after which Patreon only after party will start. Link to which is at the top of your screens. Yoda.
Yeah, I'm just doing some Friday math here, and the average US driver drives around 14,200 miles a year, which is about just under 1,200 miles per month. At 3x the utility, if this is a Robotaxi type of utility level, let's say it's 3x of the average, at a cost of, let's say, $450, sort of taking the lease cost versus the insurance and whatever else you want to add on to it, the cost per mile is 13 cents. Now, yeah, just essentially it's quite low. I think the cost per mile for fuel alone in the US averaged around 14 cents per mile to 20 cents per mile, depending on the cost of the fuel.
Let me give you a sense of how cheap it is. Waymo costs about $10 per mile in San Francisco and LA. If you drive 10 miles in a Waymo, obviously they're not directly comparable, but that's the cost of an FSD monthly subscription.
Michael.
I just wanted to respond to the points earlier made about, a lot of people wanting to use their phones before they buy. I think that the removal, I don't think it's quite as binary like that. I think there's kind of hurdles. And I mean, the biggest hurdle is when you can no longer pay attention. But there's steps, milestones along the way that will unlock kind of additional subscriptions. And removing the wheel nag is one of them. If it really is improving 5 or 10x in miles per disengagement, there was a post yesterday from Reigns that was saying basically that he expects, based on that, he estimated that more than 90% of drives will have no disengagement whatsoever, critical or non-critical. And then if you're 9 out of 10 of your drives are no disengagement, I feel like the stress level will be a lot lower um, of using it and supervising it. And I think that will unlock a lot of subscriptions. So it makes me wonder that Tesla maybe do the free trial a little bit early, a little bit prematurely. Maybe they should have waited for 12.4. Maybe they'll do another one.
That's right. And that's exactly what I suggested when people were talking about free trials. I said, wait. And people said, don't wait. And now people are like, oh, we should have waited. So keep that in mind for future reference. Kim Coffey in the replies says, I spoke with someone at Cruise and their offices aren't really being used as much in San Francisco prior to the incident lawsuit. Perhaps Cruise business is less limited in Santa Clara County versus San Francisco County. Omar?
No, this is a California state regulatory body that's pulled their permit, so they're not allowed to operate anywhere in California. Moving down to the South Bay might save some rent, but rent's pretty expensive there too, so I'm not really sure.
Did you have something else to say? I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, a few different points. So I think with the phone use issue, this software will actually enable people to use their phones and pay attention to what's on their phone and not pay attention to the road eventually, but not yet. But we're already taking steps in that direction. I mean, obviously, you should not use your phone while you're driving. You should look at the road. Using your phone gives you the safety performance of a drunk driver. So, using your phone is the same thing as driving drunk from a safety stats perspective. So, please don't use your phone. Having said that, not having a nag does make it easier to use your phone because you can hold your phone. And FSD actually doesn't care if you're holding your phone. It just cares if you're looking at the road, you know? So if you want to look at your phone every couple seconds for 1 second, that's okay. If you want to use like voiceover, like the UI for blind people, and use your phone without looking at it, you're actually allowed to do that. So, having hands free is a small step in that direction. Yes, you're not supposed to use your phone still, but if there are people who are looking for this type of thing, they need to do something with their hands, then, being able to be hands free, I think, is a step in that direction. And as the software continues to get better, they're going to relax the cabin based driver monitoring as well. I can imagine, in traffic jams at low speeds, they start to relax it, then maybe at higher speeds too, maybe on the highways. So I think that's going to increasingly be the case over time. And there's a lot of free trials that are still going out. There's people who are just starting their, free trial today, as we saw in there. So it'll be interesting to see how that cohort does. And I think when people hear about some of these new features, they'll want to try it, hopefully. And you can always send out another trial. Then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, we're in the last 10 minutes here, and this is kind of really off topic, but
9 minutes.
there was a really kind of, post everyone's talking about, Jan from the OpenAI alignment team who resigned. He wrote a thread about it, and he basically said we weren't given enough compute, we weren't taken seriously. That's why, Ilya left the company, and OpenAI has kind of put flashy products above safety, which is what the company was founded for. So this is something that everybody in the AI community is talking about today. Sam Altman has responded directly, quote tweeting him and saying, we take this really seriously. I'm going to have a longer response to this later. And yeah, kind of interesting there.
Interesting. Thank you, Omar, for keeping us posted on that front. 8 minutes remaining. If you have any final words, you may speak now or hold your silence forever, or you can join Patreon for the after party. On the after party, we just do a kind of summary, talk about macro and whatever questions patrons have. It's about half hour a day. Nick.
Really quick on the GM Cruise stuff. If you go on YouTube and you look up, GM's $280 billion bet, Bloomberg just did a piece. They do talk about that. I just watched it last night. It kind of seems like that whole thing's on pause after the incident in California, but interesting if people want to check that out. But Yaman, do you have a link? I'm honestly trying to get rid of as many monthly subscriptions as I can, but I would like to donate, make like a one-time donation. And is there somewhere where I can donate without signing up for it to be like a reoccurring monthly thing?
Yeah, one time best place to do it is on X. On my profile, there's a tip jar next to my profile name. And that is the best way to do it because Stripe doesn't take a fee. Everywhere else does take a fee.
And honestly, I'll do more than one. I just hate signing up for monthly stuff. So yeah, I'd like to contribute, and I will. Thank you for holding the good space today.
Thank you, Nick. Finflexity.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys covered it. Yes, on 16th. Yeah, I don't think you covered it. But anyways, GM settlement for the accident came out, and they had to pay around 10 million for it. I couldn't find more details about it, but if anyone knows, just let me know.
Thank you. Akshay.
Well, I'll just present a happy anecdote, sort of contrary to what we heard about the Tesla dealership experience. Uh, I have two friends now looking for EVs, and they will not look for anything other than FSD. They're in the used car market, so they're basically have been riding around with me for the last 2 months, and after the initial jitters, have come to the conclusion that FSD, using that in city traffic, down here, driving up and down I-5, is the best value for a car. Everything else is irrelevant, like literally to that point. Just from experience. So longer trials are definitely going to help. And yes, things like removing the nag and all that stuff is just going to accelerate this.
Thank you, Akshay. I just reposted Finflexity's summary of what he talked about with Shanghai authorities. You may read that on his post. Let me just quickly read this out loud. Tesla has been given approval by Shanghai authorities, allowing international companies to export data without restriction from the Pudong district, which is a free trade zone. And then he has a thread talking about the details of it. So this I just reposted. You can find on my, or you can follow him. He's on the speaker board right now. Okay, good. Good. This is my 8th year anniversary on X today, guys. Time flies. Crazy. 8 years. A lot of hours. Happy to be here in this space with you all. Appreciate the time you all bring in here as well. Always a good time. So we're going to start. Patrons, if you could please be patient. If I don't start right away, there's usually a technical problem that I'm like freaking out about, trying to figure it out. But this is only the 3rd day, so I'm trying to find the best way to do it. Figuring things out. All right. I will see you guys in there in a few minutes. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy your weekends. Maybe the next space will be Sunday night, or if not, Monday. Thank you, and talk to you next time.